What's going on, guys? Back with another video, and today we're going to talk about musicals in 2024 and why they haven't been as good in my eyes as they probably should have been. Last year I immensely enjoyed The Color Purple, and the year before that I really liked Annette. I think all of these movies have brought some sort of originality to the source material, and because of their ambition, because of the technical achievements, because of the writing, the storytelling, I've walked away really enjoying a lot of these movies. Despite originally not being very keen on the genre itself, over time I've come to really appreciate these films, and this year we had way more titles available in the genre and they've all underperformed in my eyes. And we'll kick things off with the latest film that just came out, and I do consider it a musical. They do break out in song quite a bit, and that is Mufasa, A Lion King story. This just came out, and I have to say that this was a very disappointing entry in Disney's catalog. I guess it's not too much of a surprise in their catalog, but this is a film that, you know, it's riding a lot on its visuals. And granted that in 2019, when I originally saw the Lion King movie, I was in awe with the special effects. I was very positive with the movie, even though I had a lot of issues with the carbon copy, you know, dull storytelling of a story that is really beloved and something that I grew up with. And I almost overlooked that, and I was still positive with the film, even though I really was like, I don't know how much this is going to hold aside from visuals. And one of my biggest complaints was the emotional side of the storytelling, because you don't really feel anything for these characters because they're not emoting. Because of its visuals, of its time, I kind of overlooked a lot of the problems, or I acknowledged them, but I didn't take as much off for it. And in 2016, with Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book, and then when he did 2019's The Lion King, the effects were really something flashy and kind of something that drew me to that medium. And with everything that's happening nowadays, where video games or every animated intellectual property is being turned into a live action version of the same story, whether it's How to Train Your Dragon, you know, Sonic, Lilo and Stitch, and Snow White, it's just endless. And it's the newest go-to thing for Disney because they have no ideas anymore. And to me, at this point, it's not impressive. 4 or 5 years ago, you had me. Now it's nothing. It really doesn't stand out a whole lot. And when you have a movie like Mufasa, where that is the biggest selling point, and after watching the movie, that's the only thing that I think is going well for it, is the visuals, that's a bit of a problem. I think where the Lion King film really relied on the visuals, it also had a good story that they copied and pasted from the 1994 animated film, of course. So it's not like I was going to tear the movie to shreds for having a bad story. As far as Mufasa, the story is very similar to what we got in the original 94 film and, of course, the 19 release. Very similar beats. It's literally the same exact story. They do fix the emoting problem I had with the first film. Like, you do see a little bit more emotion and character in these creatures, but the story is just very poorly written. It really feels like it was written by ChatGPT or something. And it's like, oh, here's the Lion King story. Evolve this into an origin story. It doesn't feel like it has anything new to say. And the music. This is why I'm saying the musicals have failed in 2024, because the music is not very memorable at all. I really remember the music, of course, in the 94 film, which they do try to play here to kind of sway your emotion. But there's nothing new here to play. Nothing is going to have you breaking out into song and dance. And nothing here is you're going to be humming after the movie is over. There's just nothing here that's memorable. None of the characters, the villains. And I quite frankly think the storytelling is kind of ridiculous because of certain things that happen that I'm like, oh, okay, we're just gonna ignore this little plot problem and move on and rush through the story to because we have to go on this adventure of, oh, self-discovery, self-learning. I gotta become the king of the jungle. I gotta look up to my grandfather. I gotta look up to my grandfather, not my father. Simba is pretty much an afterthought in this movie. Of course, it's got to be about Mufasa, of course, because we have to do a prequel to the story. So we're going back in time to tell the story of how he became king and how he grew up. And the story is incredibly rushed, The characters are not developed well at all. And like I said, the villain is so two-dimensional, and then the other side of that story, you're like, well, I could have called that probably 10 minutes into the movie. It's such a dull movie. Going into this, like, I had no expectations. I thought it was gonna be maybe okay, and I went in and the theater was nearly empty on opening day. That was already a bad sign in my eyes. And then I looked at, showings for Saturday, and nothing. Like, the theater's near empty. And having just come off Interstellar like a few weeks back, a movie that's been out for years, 10 years to be exact, and that had an IMAX showing and the theater was filled to the brim. I barely found a seat. That goes to show how much excitement there was for a re-release of a movie versus a new movie that just came out. The first movie was very successful, and this movie is not drawing anybody in. I know some people are probably prioritizing Sonic 3 over Mufasa, but Mufasa's not drawing the numbers. It's a one-trick pony that is told one too many times, and it's the visuals are not going to just sell me on this movie. And as a musical, it fails. As a movie, it fails, and that's probably the worst musical I've seen this year. And then in terms of other musicals that came out in 2024, I know a lot of people are gonna give me a lot of flack for this, but Wicked was not that great of a movie. I think as a musical, it failed. Like I said before, I didn't walk out of that movie theater singing and humming those songs. And I know it's based on a Broadway play, but you know what? At the end of the day, a Broadway play, I have a lot more appreciation because it's done in one take. We get the full angle view of the whole thing. It's not edited to death. It's not hiding things. At any point, I could look at anywhere on the stage and someone is giving their all and they're performing. It's not a movie, and it does hurt my wanting to watch the Broadway because none of the music really stood out to me. But I also think it's a failed musical because you have the talent there. Cynthia Erivo clearly can sing very well. She's a very talented actress who unfortunately is underutilized in this film once again, like she was in the Harriet movie. And then you have Ariana Grande, like, the star power is there. Why aren't you utilizing it? Towards the end of the movie, a certain other singer, a very popular singer, shows up, and she has such like operatic vocals, and this movie kind of springs to life for like the little bit of time. And I'm like, where was this energy the entire movie? Why aren't we breaking into these extravagant song and dance numbers the entire time? And we were breaking into song and dance for all these like forgettable songs. So the choreography is nice to look at, but none of it is very memorable. And some of the songs that are maybe a little bit catchy, they sing for about 15 seconds and then they stop singing. And I'm like, why aren't you singing longer? Why aren't these like 1 minute, 2 minute numbers? I don't feel the energy in this film. And then you have like the really dull and flat digital look of this film. The story is also just incredibly weak. Like I said, with Mufasa, where it felt like a ChatGPT written movie, this had formulaic written all over it, and it's twice as long as the Broadway play. I just did not enjoy this movie. I mean, I didn't hate it. I know there's like a huge divide where some people really liked it and some people really hated it. I'm right down the middle. I think it's okay. It's just a very forgettable, like average musical. Nothing really stood out about it. So in my eyes, it failed as a musical. It was just an okay movie. Nothing really to talk about. Cynthia Erivo was probably the standout in that movie. Good costuming, good choreography, but everything else was forgettable for me. Then we move on to the other musicals that came out this year with The End. That just came out a few days ago. Interesting movie. It's got its own audience, of course, because it's a very quirky and dark, I guess, comedy slash musical in some ways. It's got good performances. The problem with that film, like every other musical this year, is none of the music sticks. And it's also because the tone is just all over the place in that movie. So while Michael Shannon and Tilda Swinton are very good in the roles that they're given, tonally this whole movie is off. The characters are very awkward. The writing isn't that great, even though the ideas on paper seem like this would be a fantastic movie. The music just really clashes with the darker tones of the movie, and because of that, it didn't really work for me either as a musical. I think it failed in that department. And as a movie as a whole, it was okay. I think I appreciate the movie for its ambition and because it felt like such an original movie that had something to say, unlike the other two movies I just talked about that feel very formula driven. This did have some originality. I just think it had poor direction and didn't develop its ideas to its very high potential. But this is also a lower budget film that's not costing like tons of millions of dollars. Like, for what it is able to give us, like, I think it utilized its budget very well. It just didn't tell its story well. And then it doesn't have like the superstar singing power here as well. I mean, we do have Michael Shannon breaking into the song, but he's no Russell Crowe, at least, so it's like you don't have to cover your ears completely. So maybe a movie like this would have benefited being a drama instead of a musical, but once again, didn't deliver in that category either. And then we move on to the last film, which is probably the most successful this year, which also in my eyes failed as a musical, but was an entertaining film nonetheless, and that was Joker 2. This is probably the best one of the four because cinematically, it is a well-crafted film. It's got really good performances, and the story is serviceable, even if repetitive and starts dragging the longer it runs. One of those situations where, again, music is not memorable in the slightest. I think I remember the one soundtrack that is utilized, but otherwise, nothing about this is gonna stick with me in the slightest. And it's quite unfortunate because, again, you have Lady Gaga in the role. She's a very talented singer. Why aren't we utilizing her? Why isn't there so much energy and new songs and just vibrance bursting in this movie? It's just baffling that we have the more and more singers appearing as actresses in movies and they're not even utilizing them to their highest capabilities. It's very frustrating as a viewer to experience this because you know the potential is there. And while Joker 2, I think, is a serviceable movie, I don't think I would ever watch it again. I don't go back and be like, oh, that was a great musical. I just think it was a well-made movie from a technical aspect because the cinematography is good. It is a well-edited movie. And it does have a style. Like, it doesn't feel like this bland movie like Mufasa. Like, or even Wicked. As much as I appreciate the costuming and makeup of that movie, I don't think that movie really leaps off the screen like The Wizard of Oz, because that's a movie that's 85 years old, and I still remember that movie. I still remember how incredibly it looked, the music, the characters. I could still sing those songs, even though I haven't seen the movie in years. And the same could be said about many musicals over the years, whether it's Les Miserables, whether it's Sweeney Todd, or Chicago. Say what you want about those movies, I still remember the performances, the music, and all the technical aspects of those movies. And that's why, in my eyes, they were more successful musicals than the ones we're getting in 2024, which are all movies I probably won't remember by next year. I will remember them being dull experiences. And it's quite unfortunate because it's not like the most accessible genre. I think when the Joker 2 first came out, a lot of people were rolling their eyes like, oh, why the heck is it a musical? And that's already like the wrong attitude to enter a movie. I'm someone who didn't enjoy musicals for the longest time. When La La Land first came out, I didn't like that movie. I just thought, what is this? Why are we breaking into song and dance when we're sitting in traffic? That just like didn't make any sense to me. That's like a horrible experience. Why would you be happy about that? And it's I was like, I don't get this. And then as time has passed, as I've watched more musicals, a lot of older films, I have definitely come to appreciate it as more of an exaggerated form of storytelling. Whether it's trailers that just make it look terrible, which is why it took me 3 weeks to actually watch Wicked, or just movies that don't seem like they have any purpose in existing other than the business side of filmmaking, you kind of question whether you really want to see some of these movies because Mufasa, there was barely any hype around this movie. I did not hear anything. I almost forgot this movie's coming out. And yeah, the theater count really shows that. And then when you watch the movie, it doesn't really help its cause either. So 2024, pretty weak year for musicals in my eyes. I know some people will defend Wicked. And you know what? That's probably the most serviceable musical of all four of these. But at the end of the day, I will not remember a single song in any of these movies. There's some technical achievements, obviously, to praise, whether it's Mufasa's special effects, whether it's Wicket's costume designs, the Joker 2's production and also costume design. But aside from that, these movies are not having a whole lot of lasting power for me, at least. So I just wanted to talk about these musicals in 2024 because I've literally watched 3 of these movies back to back. It's been a very heavy musical weekathon, and I was like, why am I not enjoying any of these? So I'm just curious if anybody else thinks the same way, that these are just like very average musicals that we're getting, or are some people really enjoying this? Very curious to hear people's thoughts down below. Make sure to comment them in the comment section and hit that thumbs up there if you like this video. Make sure to hit that subscription bar down below to see more videos, and I will see you guys next time.